Thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to talk about extending marketing cloud engagement with Agentforce. I want to start with a little bit of gratitude. Thank you to Salesforce for allowing me to present on this topic and for you all to spending your afternoon with me. I hope we can get the most out of this time today. So I'm going to talk a little bit about myself, just for a few minutes. My name is Pato Sapir. I'm the SVP of Product Innovation at Marcus Thomas. But more than that, I'm actually started working with Salesforce Marketing Cloud back in 2012. I have a software development background. I've been developing coding since I'm 18 years old. I'm a Salesforce MVP and marketing champion. And back in 2015, I decided to start my own Salesforce consultancy focused on marketing cloud engagement. It's called Devs United. And that was acquired by Marcus Thomas in 2019, so that's when I joined Marcus Thomas. And this year, I decided to launch a product within Marcus Thomas called Nucleus, which is basically an add-on for Marketing Cloud that helps marketers simplify and centralize the campaign creation and governance process. But I'm also an amateur beekeeper. Any beekeepers in the room? I always have to ask a question. One day someone's going to raise their hand and I'm going to have a new best friend. But I've been beekeeping for 4 years now, and I love it. That's me in the picture. So we're going to learn a lot of things today. And this session, you don't necessarily, although the title says Marketing Cloud Engagement, you don't necessarily need to have Marketing Cloud Engagement to enjoy the content of this session. But just for my own sake, show of hands, how many of you are using Marketing Cloud Engagement right now? Okay, most of you, which is great. You're going to find a lot of this content relevant. Any of you experimenting or have deployed agents? Okay, a couple, okay. So we're going to try to cover 3 main things here. One is we're going to talk about Agentforce custom actions and how we can use a custom action to call from an agent, call an external API. Now, in this case, that's going to be the Marketing Cloud Engagement API, but it could be any external API. Then we're going to talk about the opposite, how you can, from a third-party system, you can call the Agentforce API. In my example, I'm going to show you how you can do it from Marketing Cloud Engagement and use the Agentforce API, but it can be any third-party system. And the last one is a little more relevant to Marketing Cloud Engagement users, which is how to extend content builder in Marketing Cloud Engagement. So before we begin, I kind of use this slide to level set the knowledge in the room, because it's important to understand how Agentforce works, especially when we are talking about integrating it with a third-party system like Marketing Cloud Engagement. So the way it works is rather simple. Every time you interact with an agent, let's say, for example, a customer wants to ask an agent about the status of the order, the agent is going to identify that ask, and it's going to classify it into a topic. Now, a topic is a set of instructions and actions that we can configure in Agentforce Builder. Okay? So in this case, I configure a topic that is called order management, and I put some instructions. I say, hey, when the customer asks for order, make sure you have their email address or order number, etc. Inside a topic, as I was saying, we have actions. Okay? So actions are things that the agent is allowed to do. And actions can be things that happen inside your org. So for example, look up a record in your org, or go outside of your org and connect to a third-party API. And we're going to talk a little bit about those. We're going to talk about custom actions. Okay? So the agent is going to build a plan based on the topic, and it's going to execute the actions that are necessary, and then it's going to give an answer to the customer. What I like about Agentforce is kind of like a combination of the power of an LLM, but with all the knowledge and the data that you have in your own CRM, but also you can go outside of your CRM and connect to other systems. So that's, I think, what makes Agentforce powerful, and can drive a lot of useful use cases. Now, I want to see another show of hands. I promise it's the last one, but Who knows here what Marketing Cloud Growth or Advanced Edition is? Okay, some of you, right. So as you may or may not know, over the past couple of years, we've been introduced to the next generation of Marketing Cloud known as Agentforce Marketing. This is basically bringing all the power of the Marketing Cloud platform in the core platform. And it starts with Marketing Cloud Growth, which is basically allows me to create omni-channel campaigns using Flow, create emails and landing pages. Then we have Advanced Edition, which is kind of like growth plus other features like AI scoring, path experimentation, and whatnot. So you start with growth, you can go into advanced, all this sitting on the core platform. And then that gives you the ability to access extended capabilities such as Salesforce personalization, marketing intelligence, and loyalty management. And all that grouping is called Agentforce Marketing, okay? The beauty of this is because we are on the core platform, now we can, we're sitting on top of Agentforce and Data 360, and we can use the power of Agentforce to drive a lot of these campaigns and segments and whatnot. However, while this new generation of Marketing Cloud allows us to take advantage of the power of Agentforce to do things like creating campaigns based on a brief, or even creating content or creating a segment, you might have noticed that some of these functionalities are not available if you're using Marketing Cloud Engagement. And this is why you came to this session, I assume, or I hope. So let's talk about how can we bring Agentforce to Marketing Cloud Engagement. So we have two options to get access to Agentforce capabilities within Marketing Cloud Engagement. Two options, there's probably more than two options. Two options we're going to cover here. One is using Marketing Cloud Engagement Plus add-on. The Marketing Cloud Engagement Plus add-on is an add-on that's available to Marketing Cloud Engagement users, which allows you to get access to Marketing Cloud Advanced, this is Marketing Cloud on Core, and access features such as connecting your journeys in Marketing Cloud Engagement to a flow, or creating a segment using Agentforce and using that segment to feed a journey. So it's a really nice way to actually try the new features, the next generation of Marketing Cloud, while you are still using Marketing Cloud Engagement. So we talk a lot about convergence because you are converging both platforms together with this option. Option two, the one that I like because I'm a little of a hacker myself, is build our own integrations with Agentforce using everything, all the frameworks that are available today. So because we're at TDX, we need to build our own thing, right? We're developers, we need to do it. So let's talk about building our own. So within that approach of building our own integration, I'm going to cover two different approaches, and I'm going to do two pretty intense demos. Now, rest assured, you're going to have GitHub repositories with templates with the code for all this. So that's my gift to you. You're going to have a lot of the code so you can get started. The first approach is using a custom action from Agentforce to call the Marketing Cloud Engagement API. So from an agent, calling the Marketing Cloud Engagement API. The second approach is going to be building a custom content builder block to call the Agentforce API. So think about it the other way around. So let's talk about the first approach, custom actions and Marketing Cloud Engagement API. So what is a custom action? So Agentforce, as I was mentioning, has hundreds, I think, to this point, of standard actions. Actions that when you configure an agent, you can access to from a library, and you can set your agent right away. You have cloud actions that are related to sales, service, marketing, commerce. And then you have platform actions. And I'm sure you've seen it if you did a trailhead that is looking up answers from knowledge, or retrieving a field, or writing a summary. Those are called platform actions because they're kind of native to Agentforce. And then we have custom actions. Custom actions, that doesn't mean that it involves code necessarily. But a custom action is something that is not a standard action, okay? So we can use a prompt template as a custom action. We can use an MCP connection. We can actually use a flow as a custom action. So if any of the standard actions don't do what I need to do, I can configure a flow and I can call it from my agent. And then lastly, which is what we're gonna do today, is an Apex action. Okay, so what is an Apex custom action? I don't consider myself an expert in anything, really, but on Apex. But a custom action is basically a class that is going to have an invocable method. And that invocable method is going to have invocable variables that are going to be used from an agent as input variables. And then once you are inside the invocable method, you can do whatever you want. You can connect to an API, you can process data, you can run SQL queries, you can do whatever you want once you're in there. The important thing is that you're going to need to give the agent an output so they can do something with it. You know, whether call another sub-agent, call another action, or answer the customer. So let's take a look at the first approach. Okay. So I have a little demo here for you. So here's our fictitious, oh, sorry, one second. I need to explain to you what we're going to do. So what are we going to do here? Because I made this chart. It will be a shame if I don't show you the chart, the diagram. So we have a fictitious e-commerce store called Football Shop. Now this is fictitious. I don't sell merchandise here, although maybe in the future I will. We sell soccer apparel. And we have a customer named Claire that she wants to interact with an agent on our site. We have an agent deployed on our website. And she interacts with the agent, and she asks for the order status. And at the end of the day, we want the agent to say, hey, we can send you a summary of a conversation we just had. Now, we have Marketing Cloud engagement, so we want to send that email with Marketing Cloud engagement. So what's going to happen is we're going to configure an agent to have a custom action. The custom action is going to be an Apex custom action that is going to call the Marketing Cloud API. The custom action is going to receive the email address of a person, and it's going to receive all the summary of the conversation we just had. And it's going to add that record into a journey in Marketing Cloud so Claire can get the email. So now I'm going to show you how that works. All right, so we're here. We're going to interact with an agent. I'm going to say, hey, how may I assist you today? The agent, I'm going to tell the agent, I'm going to ask a question. Just so you see, I configure the agent to answer questions with knowledge. So I ask about the return policy, and the agent gives me information on the return policy. Now I'm going to say, I would like to know what is the status of my order. We instructed the agent that every time a customer asks for this, they should ask for the order number. So I put a fake, a random order number, and I say, hey, I couldn't find it. But if you want, you can leave your name and an email, and I'll create a case. I don't have enough budget to have 24/7 customer support, so I'm going to create a case in Service Cloud, and then we're going to call you. So give me your name and your email address. We'll create a case, and someone is going to call you. So I just provide my name and my email. And then I'd say, hey, to the agent, give the case number to the person, so that if they call, they can reference the case number. And then I say, would you like to receive a summary of our conversation over email? And I say yes. So that's the customer interaction. I think it's a great interaction. Now, let's look at what happens on the backend. So on the backend, I'm on service here, or in the case console, and I have a new case created with the description of everything that the interaction was with the customer, so the customer support rep knows what to do. And then we have a journey here with 6 entries, and when I refresh, I'm going to have a new entry right here. And then I'm going to show you what this email looks like that the customer will receive. I'll pull it up right now. And then it basically says, hey, this is what we talked about. This is your case ID. And actually added 2 buttons on the email to send feedback back to the agent. Hey, I was happy with the interaction with the agent or not. That feedback is crucial to improve the agent. Now, this is our agent. I'm on the Agentforce Builder on the canvas mode. If you were in the keynote, you probably saw the canvas mode. And these are all my instructions for the agent. On the left-hand side, I have the topics. As I was mentioning, I have one topic called order management. And I have all the instructions for it. And under the topic, I have actions. I have an action to get the status of the order. I have an action to create a case. And I have an action to create, to send the email to the customer. In the instructions, I say things like, hey, ask the user for the order number. And then I can call actions that I configure here. So for example, saying, hey, after calling the create case action, ask the user if they want to receive a summary of a conversation. And if they say yes, call this action, send SFMC Figma email. This is our custom action that we have right here. Now, this is a flow action that's going to have an Apex class inside. I'm going to show you, OK? The flow action has two input variables, the description of a conversation and the email address. And then it's going to give me as an output the contact key of a person, just so I can use it, right? As you know, with Agentforce Builder, I can actually test the agent. I can actually do batch testing, so I can upload data as a batch and test it, or I can live test like I'm doing now. And on the right-hand side, in the interaction summary, I can see what the reasoning is for the agent, which actions he's selecting. If they're executing, I can see if there are errors in my flow or in my classes. I can see everything here. So this is a really good way to start testing your agent without deploying it. Now let's look at our custom action. Like I said, this is a custom action that starts with a flow and calls our Apex action inside. Very important when you configure a flow that you configure variables, OK? So I have 3 variables here. The description of a conversation, that's going to have a summary. Very important that you flag the available for input, because this is what the agent uses to say, understand, hey, I need to send the description of a conversation to this action. And if you don't have this available for input, it's not going to know what to send. So very important, all your variables that you find are available for input. So we have the email address available for input. And I have the contact key because I need that for Marketing Cloud engagement, which I also going to return back to my agent. And now we have the Apex class, and then my invocable method has those same 3 variables. It has a contact key, which in Marketing Cloud engagement, we use the email address as contact key. Probably a big no-no. I know some of you more experienced, I know, but it depends who you ask. Conversation description and the email address. So we're mapping these inputs into our class. Let's look at some of the code here. So I have the code here. This is it has a method that's called add to journey. It's an invocable method. It's flagged with the invocable method attribute. And I have, I have the 3 invocable variables here at the bottom defined, the email address, contact key, and the conversation description. It's very important to be very descriptive with your methods. See, I have the label and description, because that's going to help the agent also understand the context. And then in the method itself, I basically call in the Marketing Cloud API, the REST API. Here I put my domain. I'm going to authenticate, obviously, with the Marketing Cloud API. And then the event definition key is basically the ID of a journey that I want to call. And then I'm passing the email address, conversation encryption, and contact key to that REST API call in Marketing Cloud, so I can personalize the email. Okay. So you'll see later in my GitHub repository, you have a little more time to review this code. So let's take a look at the second scenario. Okay, so the first scenario was about how we can call from Agentforce, we can call the Marketing Cloud API. Now the second scenario, separate but related, is how we can call from Content Builder the Agentforce API. What is a custom Content Builder block? The best way I like to describe a custom content builder block is that it's a website that is iframe inside content builder. And that website has to implement the a JavaScript SDK, which is called the Content Block SDK, that allows your website to talk with Marketing Cloud, with the parent of the iframe. Okay? Now, this SDK has methods, triggers, and methods that allow you to set data and read data from your content block, from a user experience. And then you can also interact with the Marketing Cloud API. And then we have the Agentforce API. The Agentforce API is pretty simple to use. It's almost like interacting with an agent, but via a REST API. That's all it is. You're having a conversation with an agent. To set up the Agentforce API, you need to create an external app. Unless you already have a connected app, but if you are starting from scratch, you will need to create an external app. You will generate an OAuth token, and then you make API requests just as you will do chatting with an agent. So let's take a look at our second demo and use case, what we're going to build. So now we're on the inside football shop, inside the organization. Marco is a marketer. As I was mentioning, we use Marketing Cloud Engagement at football shop. And he wants to actually build an email, and he wants to generate variations of a content, a headline that he has in the email. Now, they have developed an agent that has some logic in it, and he wants to use the agent. He doesn't want to use something else. He wants to use the logic of the agent because that also will be safe, to do. So he's going to drag a custom content block into an email. We develop a custom content block for him, so he's going to drag into an email. The content block is going to be the one interacting with the agent, and the agent is going to be in charge of providing the variations of the content and insert those variations into the email. And then Marco is going to be able to use it and do variations. A lot of times I see people using AI to just create one snapshot of an idea for a content, but I think the beauty of AI is that you can actually create 3 or 4 variations and test and see which one works better and evolve. So that's what we're going to do in this content block. So let's take a look at how this works. So here we are in Marketing Cloud Engagement. We have an email here that has a headline that I want to actually test variations of it. So I'm going to go ahead and go into Content Builder on the left-hand side, my blocks. And we develop, like I said, a custom content block for Agentforce. Okay? So we're going to drag it here. And now you see on the left-hand side the experience. I'm not leaving Marketing Cloud, right? So I'm asking the user, hey, give me a reference content. So I'm going to type the actual headline that I want to test against. How many variations? I want to test 3 variations. And then I put another thing, which is a tracking tag. So if you're familiar with impression regions, so a tracking tag basically allows us to surround the content with impression regions so we can get reporting on the performance. So this is very useful to actually see which content works better versus the other one. When I click on the Generate Variation button, it's going to give me the 3 results. Now, this is talking to the agent. And when I click on Use Suggestions, it's going to actually put a little placeholder so I know I have a content there. And in the HTML editor, I'm going to see if I can zoom this out, I'm going to have my original headline, and then I'm going to have the 3 generated one. And then if you're familiar with server-side JavaScript, I'm basically doing a random generation and then assigning that to an AppScript variable that then I can put in my email. So all I have to do is just copy this block, replace my original headline with it, and then I can go ahead and do previews. And this could be a headline, this could be HTML, this could be a button, a call to action, whatever you want, because we have that tracking tag. So I can kind of preview the different headlines here. Now, how is this built? Let's take a look at our agent. Our agent is very simple for this demo. It's just an agent that says the instructions. It has one topic, email content creator, and it has instruction that says just provide content and do not provide anything else other don't answer the customer. I basically want the agent to provide me text. But you can configure this agent as however you like. You can configure this agent to get recommendations from your org. This is a nice part, is that I think it's a very sustainable and safe way to do this, because everything is going to be in your agent, and you're not interacting with other third-party LLMs or AI tools and whatnot. And then the second part is a custom content block. Now, a custom content block, as I say, is a website. This is a Node.js website, but it can really be any technology you want. It has to have a specific structure. You have to have 2 icons. You have to have a main HTML file or index file. And then it has to implement the block SDK, as I say. But the website, I built it with Lighting Design System. I just put the fields that I have here, the reference content, variations, and tracking tag, and the results panel, where I'm going to show. And then I have jQuery, block SDK, and the main.js files as my scripts. The main.js file has a lot of the logic of a content block. It creates a new instance of a block SDK, where I can say how wide I want that block to be, which tabs, if you remember, I had the HTML block tab or the styling block, which tabs I can configure it. And then I'm going to call the trigger the event to get the data. When the content block gets loaded, basically it's going to call the getData function, and I'm going to be able to retrieve information from the cache of that content block. Then I have the logic to, when I click the generate button, where I retrieve all the information from the inputs, and then I'm calling a route, which I'm going to tell you, and this is a route that's going to call the Agentforce API. And what I pass that API, that route is a prompt. It says, hey, give me X amount of variations for this text. That's my prompt. And then when I get the results, I just put them in a list. And lastly, my use results button is the one that is writing that server-side JavaScript code there. And then I'm saving on the setData method, I'm saving all the data to a content block kind of caching system. And then lastly is my Agentforce route. My Agentforce route is basically what talks to the Agentforce API. I have an authentication method. And then the authentication method, what it's going to do, it's going to basically get an auth token with the client ID and the client secret of my app, my external app. And then I'm going to call, I'm going to get the token, and then I'm going to call a method that's called start a session. Start a session is kind of like starting the conversation. And for that, I need an access token and the ID of the agent, which you can get from Agentforce Builder. So I say, hey, I want to start a session with this agent. And once I get a session ID, now I'm connected. That's almost like I'm chatting with an agent, but through an API. So now I have a session ID, and I can go back and forward with the agent through the API. So in this case, I'll send a message to the agent with that prompt, like I was telling you. And then I'm going to get an answer. And because that answer is going to be separated in different lines, I need to format it a little bit better, like in a JSON format. So I'm just massaging the data a little bit, break the line breaks to respond in a JSON format. I'm going to show you a little bit of an advanced content block that we built here for the product that we developed, Nucleus. We have a content block that we use for clients that follows the same concept, but it's a little more advanced, just so you get an idea of how far you can go, right? So in this case, you're going to choose a content type. So you can choose, hey, I want to generate a subject line or an image or just general copy. I'm going to choose an image. You can choose the size of the image. You can choose a reference design that you might have saved. You type in the headline that you want to promote. You type in your campaign objectives. So in this case, for example, it will be summer sale. You can choose your brand and targeted personas, which are going to have attributes tied to them, and how many variations you can create. And now that's going to connect to Agentforce, not only going to generate text, but it's going to generate images based on that base design. So I'm going to choose 3 of them, and now I can use those hero banners images with text on my email. And I can test that. OK. So just final considerations to wrap things up, and we'll go into Q&A. Exposing Agentforce to a marketing team or to a customer always could have its drawbacks. Always consider pricing and the consumption for those agents. Remember that interacting with the Agentforce API is like chatting with an agent. So if an agent wants to answer, oh, I don't have that for you, you have to plan in your code to react to that. Think about Agentforce not as a way to replace something that your team is doing, but how it can augment or help you work smarter. So I call this AI should be augmented intelligence, not artificial intelligence for your team. The template I show you kind of has the credentials as you can define it on the custom action, but obviously please store this in custom metadata types in your org. That's just for an example. And then remember when you're interacting with a custom action to add, if you're interacting with a third-party service, that API URL has to be added as a remote site in your org. Those are little things that when I was doing the demos, I remember to set up. So I'm going to go back to this QR code when we go to questions, so don't worry, but I'm going to give you a few minutes. So I created a landing page. I'm going to show you real quick the landing page, so you can see it here. The landing page is going to have some of my projects that I've been working on, and it's going to have the 2 GitHub repositories, one with the custom builder block and one with the custom action that they're public, and then a lot of the official docs for you to get started with this concept. And then, so you can see it there. So with that, I think we're all set. Thank you for attending. At this point, I will appreciate if you leave feedback. Remember, if you leave feedback on 4 sessions, you can redeem a gift card. And yeah, and then also one more thing. Session summaries will be available soon in the app, so you'll see a summary of a presentation.